Hey everyone, thank you for tuning in to the Blind Banter podcast. Tonight we are going to be talking about socializing and how to interact with friends, family, as well as just strangers and even just standard acquaintances that you kind of want to, I guess, interact with or be a little
Meet.
bit more friendly with. Yes. So I
Yes.
am, of course, with my bud here, Carlos. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty well. I think this is a good topic because obviously right now everyone's social distancing and people are breaking off social connections, but this is a perfect time for blind people. I know we usually, at least for me, I've had socialization issues in the past, and I noticed that a lot of other people in the blind community do as well. So I think this is a perfect time to kind of come out of your egg, so to speak, and be a very social person. And it's quite a contrast because Lauren is probably one of the most social people I know. Like he's comfortable in almost every social situation. He can, make friends almost immediately. Like, I mean, just to give you an example, if he wouldn't have made the overture to me, I wouldn't be his friend, right? I mean, nothing against him, but it's just I'm not the type of person who goes around. Definitely not at that point. Not the type of person who goes around making, friends of random strangers. But obviously, Lauren is that type of person, and I'm glad for it. And so um, we kind of want to pass that on to you guys because speaking with Lauren for so long now has given me a little bit more social confidence, and we kind of want to pass that on to the rest of the blindness community to help improve mental health and just general well-being.
Yeah, it's it's a God-given talent, I'd say. No, for me, it was actually really, I guess, learned over time because a lot of the time you're told in many circumstances, especially if you were born with a disability, to kind of just do your thing and don't really get into too many other people's groups, or you may always be the one that's different. As a child, I had bifocals, so a lot of the time people, well, especially kids, would go, your glasses are cracked. Well, no, they're not. It's just there's a line on them because they're a bifocal, so it's an entire lens on top of a lens. So having to deal with
Super
that as a
lens.
child, yeah, exactly.
I didn't know
So
what that meant.
so having that type of thing, especially as a child, I've been wearing glasses since about the age of 2, and so having those types of interactions with children, you really have to start learning on how to take that with a grain of salt and move forward. When I was about 4 or 5ish, that's when I started wearing patches on my eyes because they were trying to make my eyes that were lazy. They were trying to strengthen them. Now, due to what I have, advanced macular degeneration and retinitis pigmentosa, that obviously didn't help, and that's why I had to get the surgeries when I was 7 and 8. But having those types of the patches on there, the lines in the glasses, having to deal with people on a daily basis, you have to come out of your shell, and if you don't come out of your shell, you're going to turn into either two types of people. You're going to be really angry at the world, which at the end of the day, let's face it, the world doesn't really care, so you're going to be the only one that's angry. Or B, you can just embrace it and try to make the best of it and say, yeah, I'm different, so what, let's move on, because I'm Lauren, I'm not blind, or so. It's just more so, I'm Lauren and I do have a visual disability, but I'm not going to be preceded by my blindness. I'm going to be preceded by me being me, the type of person I am, and being able just to move forward and learn how to overcome a situation like that.
Yeah, I mean, Lauren, I'm glad you mentioned that because I actually talked to a person today because I was very socially awkward, probably up until even my freshman year of college last year. And I kind of began to come out of that this last year, namely because I, need to recruit for investment banking. And a lot of that comes to, you need to speak to random people that you've never met, and you need to convince them that they should like you so that they can push your resume along to the right people. And for me, at first, that was probably the most daunting thing I've had to do because, I have to speak with people that I've never met. Like that's already difficult enough, right? And I have to make them like me in, 30 minutes or something like that. Well, that's impossible, right? But I find that one of the biggest assets that I have, and this has been confirmed to me many times, is your blindness, right? That's one of the biggest assets we have, because while it does make you stick out, it also makes you memorable, right? For better or for worse. And you want to use that for better, right? You can make yourself memorable, like, oh, there's that guy who just sat in the corner and did nothing for 3 hours while everyone else had fun. Or you can be, hey, you remember seeing the guy with the dog who came in here and enjoyed himself just like everyone else, right? And I went from the former to the latter pretty much throughout my sophomore year of college, even though I did have some social issues, right? I tried to join a fraternity. I got told by one of the members that I wouldn't be getting a bid because of my blindness, right? They were a little concerned. And so, those types of setbacks, I had them. But instead of saying, well, it's because I'm blind, I'm not going to move on, I'm just going to sit in my room and generally just be alone. What I did instead is I just said, well, this is just not the right group for me. Right. And that's kind of the approach we all have to take to this. And I think that's kind of what Lauren, one of Lauren's approaches that I've noticed with him is he does not bother himself with saying, well, group X doesn't like me, I need to make them like me. Right. It's more like group X doesn't like me. Well, that's too bad for them. And that's one of my favorite traits about him, because that makes him one of the most social people around. And eventually even group X is like, I kind of don't like Lauren because he, said this to me before and he told me the truths of my life that I didn't want to hear. But he's a pretty funny guy and he's likable, right? And so, that's kind of the approach that you have to have is, if a group doesn't like you, don't let it get you down. Don't make it, well, it's because I'm blind or it's because I'm this or that. Just hang out with a different group, because I guarantee you that whether you live in a small town or you live in a big city, you go to college, you have a workplace, whatever, you're going to find a group somewhere, right? Somewhere in your life. And it doesn't always have to be in, like, you might not find it in college. You might find it at work, right? You might not find it at home. You might find it at a bar. I mean, the point is that you're going to find a group somewhere that you fit in with, and a group that is going to accept you for who you are and like you for that. And, ultimately that's what we're looking for here. Because I do feel that blind people, myself included, definitely have this problem where we don't socialize enough, and that definitely has an effect on mental health and general well-being, because we're social creatures.
Yeah, and one of the things. Well, first off, thank you very much for some of those things. Stroking my ego is even better, because it needs to be stroked a little bit more. But no, so I find one of the biggest and most challenging things for a lot of people is they go, well, I'm very nervous. And what I like to tell them is, go to a place that no one knows you. And it works really well in a big city. So for example, say you are, you live on a certain side of the city and you always frequent the same watering holes or the same event spaces. Don't go there. Go across the city. Go wherever where it's not your normal thing, and just go out and try to deal with people and just try to kind of interact with people, because at the end of the day, when you come home, they're not going to know who you are. You're not really going to probably ever see them again. And you may find that it's something that you enjoy doing, and A, you may find a new group of people that you really like, or B, it's just another form of experience for you on how to socialize with people. And, it's one of the biggest things that you see as a stereotype is, oh, I'm in university or I'm in high school and I really like to go check this guy out or check this girl out, and I can't really talk to them. At the end of the day, they're a human being. If you can't talk to a human being, you can't talk to anybody. Because at the end of the day, they still come home. They still do everything you do. You may do it a little differently if they're not visually impaired or they have a disability, but they have other issues that they're dealing with on a daily basis. And so they may have the same type of thought process as you, is saying, when I get home, I don't want to deal with anybody because of X, Y, and Z problem. And you're doing the same thing.
Zed? He means
Yeah.
Z for everyone in the States.
In Canada, who says it the right way, it's Zed. So
No, I don't
you
think so.
you don't know exactly what is going on in their life, and maybe they want someone to talk to. They may want you to come up to them and break the ice, and who knows, the feeling may be mutual. It may be, oh, I think so and so is kind of cute. I'd like to really know them, and they may think the
So
same thing.
hot.
Yeah, exactly. So, so it's just at the end of the day, just talk to them, just go up to them, and yeah, it may fail, but at that point, it's you're not gaining or losing anything,
Yeah, yeah.
because the answer, if you don't ask them, is no. The answer, if you do ask them, could be no. It could be yes. So just going out and thinking that they're the exact same as you are, it's just socializing. And the
Yeah.
world goes around by having interactions with people. And I find that sometimes, well, I would say 90% of the time when you're trying to talk to them on social media or you're trying to talk to them over text, you don't know implications. You don't know body language if you have a little bit of vision left. You don't even know tone. So someone may say, and you go, oh, wow, they're really doing that, going, but you don't know the necessary tone, because I know a few people that go, kind of as jokingly and saying,
Yeah.
okay, let's do something. And you go, oh, okay, well, that's great. Or they may be a highly sarcastic person or extremely
Like
dry
Lauren.
sarcasm. Yeah, exactly. I would say I have a very dry sense of humor. And so I would definitely be that type of person. But if you were reading it over text, you'd think, wow, this guy really hates me. But it's something that just everybody has a different form of humor and a different form of social interaction. One of the big things, like you said, with like group X and everything is, I tell people, if people tell me, well, I don't like you, I go, okay, join the list, because I have so many people that don't like me, but I'm not going to allow them or the people that don't like me to really rule my world and go, well, so and so doesn't like me, how do I get them to like me? No, there's how
Yeah.
many billions of people in the world? So realistically, if you have 100 people that don't like you, that's still a pretty darn small percentage. And I don't want to be surrounded by people that don't like me. When I first met Carlos, we were at the Seeing Eye, and he was very kind of, I guess, quiet and very kind of conservative. But once you started to know him, and once you kind of started having interactions with him, he really did open up. And a lot of people are like that. They're very kind of conservative or very closed off initially because they don't know, and they're still trying to feel out the room or the crowd. And then there's other people that will say stuff where people are thinking, wow, this guy's a really, really big idiot, or did he just seriously say that? I want to know more. And I find that me, I'm very much that way, where I'll go into a room and I'll just start talking. And it's not so much out of nervousness, it's I want to see what type of people and what type of categories are in that room. And I've really narrowed it down to a few different people, where you have the ones that are very uptight, and then you have the ones that are very judgmental. You have the ones that just don't care, and then you have the other ones that are open-minded. And I find that the people that really hate me will be weeded out extremely quickly, just due to my personality. And I'm not missing anything. I'm not gaining anything. So for me, it's really null and void at that point. But it's the other ones that I find, especially the open-minded or the ones that are kind of a little bit more timid, that will gravitate towards and want to talk. One of the big issues, especially at school during high school, was a lot of people as a whole didn't really want anything to do with me, because as collectively it looked bad if you were his friend. But whenever I would be grouped with a individual, or we had to be in pairs, they would literally open up to me about everything. Oh, so and so's horrible, this or that, or I just don't understand how I can juggle this and juggle that. And when you come from a small school of 130 students from grades 6 to 12, with a graduating class of 8 when you're number 8, people really are very conservative when they try to talk about their feelings, because it's such a small school. And having that ability of the entire group not really wanting to do anything, you really get to kind of be on the fringes and listen, and also just kind of, I guess, experience the jocks and I guess like the female versions of the jocks and the cliques and different things like that. But you get to see the individuals that are in there. And when you start picking it out, then you can start seeing exactly how each individual kind of ticks, and it's really different as a collective. So that's why I find that going into a group with quote unquote guns a-blazing really will start narrowing people out really quickly, and you'll be able to see how every individual's kind of reacts differently. And then you can judge who you kind of want to be friends with and who you don't want to be. Because I'm very positive within about 30 to 40 seconds of talking to someone if I get those good vibes and I want to be around that person, or else if I get that really standoffish type, I don't want you around. And they may not necessarily mean it, but everybody's auras are so different. And I find that being visually impaired, you can not read body language, but you can feel it. And it's really, is this person off-putting or is this person very welcoming? And I don't know if Carlos feels the same way, but because we're kind of two completely different approaches to it, it's really a good grouping, I'd say, for tonight.
Yeah, I obviously have a lot more conservatism in my approach to people. At least I did before. And the reason like I said, recruiting for investment banking really taught me a lot. And the biggest thing that it's taught me is that no one is going to do anything for you, okay? If you want to have friends, you need to approach people, right? Just like if you want to get this job, you need to network with people. No one's going to come to you and say, hey, I like this guy. You know, he looks special to me for whatever reason. I'm just going to help him. No, right? You have to approach them, because there are hundreds of other people who are doing that. And that's kind of the outlook I've taken on life, right? People, I mean, I've gotten a lot of people who approach me just because of the way, you know, I'm a very confident person. And I know that body language is a little bit harder for blind people to get, but I naturally just walk around, like I have my dog, walk around with my shoulders back, my head up as high as I can get it. That's a big thing, right, guys? I know when I was younger, I got coached a lot, like, you know, I have my head like this all the time, you know, head, chin on my chest type thing. And they were saying like, hey, put your head up, put your head up, put your head up. And it, you know, to you, it doesn't make a difference, you know, especially if you're totally blind, but it makes a huge difference when you're walking by and people see you and they go, oh yeah, I know that guy. You know, a lot of people have come up to me and talked to me, or, you know, I go up to them and talk to them and they're receptive, because they're like, yeah, you were just, you know, you're one of the smartest guys in the classroom. And then you're walking around like really fast and you look really confident. You're navigating campus better than people who are sighted, right? And so, you know, I get a lot of that. And that's a big key, right? Even if you're nervous and you're like, oh my God, I don't want to talk to this person, my hands are shaking, you know, that kind of thing. Even if that's the case, you have your head up and your shoulders back and you act as though you're very confident. I find that you will be more confident, you know, right? Just putting your body into that frame, but also you will definitely convince the other person that you are confident. And if you're going to talk to them, the interaction will go better, but it might even encourage them to come up to you, right? Although I wouldn't rely on that, right? Like I said, you want to go and get something, because if you have a girl you like or a guy you like, and you're like, oh my God, he's super hot, right? But I can't talk to him. Like, it doesn't, that person isn't going to walk by and go, hey, you're the love of my life. You know, let's elope and get married. Like that's not going to happen, right? It's not. Or if it's just a friend, like, oh, that guy seems like an interesting guy, I want to talk to him, right? I've had that with several people where I'm like, oh yeah, I know, you know, I met some of my best friends like that, just going up at Penn and talking to them and saying like, hey man, what's going on? I noticed that you were talking about X, Y, and Z in class. I do that too, you know, and just spark up a conversation. And then all of a sudden, you know, hey, yeah, here's my number. You know, message me on WhatsApp or whatever, and it sets up a rapport. And I mean, that's kind of my approach to getting people to talk to it and getting more friends, and getting out of the house is definitely, you know, get the body language up, but then also don't expect anything, right? Don't expect anything, and recognize, like Lauren said, that if you are nervous, if you don't go up to that person, you're not going to get anything, right? But if you go up to that person, yeah, you know, even if the odds are 99% that you're going to fail, that 1% chance is better than zero, right? And realistically, you don't know. Maybe that person is just, especially if you're totally blind, maybe they're just longingly looking at you and they're like, oh my God, he's blind. I can't approach him. Like, maybe his dog's going to bite me, you know, like, and
or
so
maybe they're more nervous than you are because
right.
they've never dealt with a person with a disability.
Right. Exactly. I mean, I've met some people who have talked to me and said, "Hey, I think you're really smart. You know, like, I'd like to get to know you a little bit better." But those are the people who, in my opinion, are brave, because there are a lot of other people who I've met later, at like at a party or something, and they're drunk, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I know you. You're in my math class. I think you're so cool." And it's like, and you know that they're only saying that now because they're drunk, right? And so, kind of what I've taken away from that is, most people might want to talk to you, but for whatever reason, they're not going to approach you. Maybe they're nervous that day. Maybe they think about it, and then after leave class quickly or whatever, you leave your bar stool or whatever. Regardless, right? Something is going to intervene, and you don't know their thought patterns. So what you should do is charge forward, because, like Lauren says, you're no better off. You're no worse off if they, what are they going to tell you? Oh, get away from me, you creep! No one's going to do that unless you really are a creep. But like, most of us are not, right? Most of us, like, if you walk up to someone and say, "Hey, what's your name?" I'm John. I heard you talking about X, Y, or Z. They're not going to be like, "Oh my God," and like just start screaming and hitting the Amber Alert, and they're going to come and get you. No one's going to do that, right? If anything, they're going to be like, "Oh, hi, I'm, whatever," and shake hands, and things can go off to a great start. And like I said, I kind of taken a lot of that from Lauren. I think he can attest to the fact that I've definitely become a lot more social as the time has come along. And part of it has been, just talking to him and getting some feedback from him. But also it's been, the recruiting thing. Like I said, no one ever does anything for you unless you take the initiative. And so that's kind of the message I want to impart here. And Lauren, talk a little bit more about, like, you're just a naturally social person. What are kind of some tips that you might have for someone who is totally blind, and they're like, "Well, you can say this so easily, but like, how do I know anything will change in my life?" Like, do you think it's one of those things where, how many times have you struck out where you're like, "Oh, I want to meet this person, I like them," and then it turns out like they don't like me and I don't want to talk to them because they turned out to be really terrible people?
Yeah, no, I've absolutely had that many a time, and it's like I remember I'm not going to say a name, but I went up to a person that I really admired, and I said, I've heard a lot of your speeches, I've heard a lot of I've read some of your publications, and I really loved it. And he goes, "Okay, and?" I'm like, "Well, no, I'm trying to give you compliments." And his response to me was, "It doesn't make me sleep any better at night if you compliment me on my work." And I go,
Jesus.
"Okay, well, what do you want me to do?" He goes, "Nothing. Why are you even wasting my time?" And then he left. And I thought, "Oh, okay. Well, and I just stood there kind of stunned, going, "What do I do now?"
Yeah.
Because I was absolutely speechless. But there's been other times where I've went up to other people. Now, one of the funniest stories, and I've told Carlos this before, is a lot of people is going to know who Rick Hansen is. And Rick Hansen is a very
Is he related to
famous,
Chris?
no, no.
Take a
He
seat.
was, he was, he's a very, oh, I'm not sure if he's a paraplegic or a quadriplegic, but he's in a wheelchair, and he's very famous. He's a very famous advocate for people with disabilities. He has a foundation here in Canada, and I know that he's done a lot of work. Well, he came to my school, and due to me having mild sleep apnea, I ended up falling asleep through his presentation. And I remember being woken up with someone tapping on my desk, and I woke up and he goes, "Oh, I'm sorry. Am I boring you?" And I said, "No, I've got a sleeping disorder. I just fall asleep." And he goes, "Oh, well, lucky for you, you don't know what it's like to live with a disability. And if you ever have to live with a disability, you'll find that it's probably not the best thing to sleep, in people's programs." And so I was like, "Well, no, okay, I'm really sorry." And at that time, I was still able to read, but I was definitely I was losing vision, but I wasn't classified as low vision at the time. And I remember probably about 7 years later, I was classified as being visually impaired, and we were at this fundraiser, and so I went. I was at the entrance getting checked in, and he wheels over to me and he goes, "How are you?" I go, "Good, good." He goes, are you going to fall asleep on me today? And I was stunned. He has such a good memory that he knew exactly who I was. And he goes, I remember you sleeping at so-and-so. And I thought, oh, okay. And I said, how did you know? He goes, oh, because you're literally the only one that's ever done that. so, so it's just, it's amazing with what people will remember with what you do or how you interact with them. Another big thing I get a lot of is, Herbie, how are you? And I go,
Yes.
hi. And they go, no, I'm not. I'm talking to your dog. And you're like, oh, okay. And they'll go, oh, it's Herbie. And sorry, what was your name again? And it's kind of awkward, but they still remember you, but they may only remember you through your dog. But at least if they were ever to see your dog or ever to see you, say, having issues or having trouble, they would be more than willing to kind of help because, hey, it's Herbie or it's Fenway. So I find that that's one way of being able to break the ice, especially with certain people or into certain groups. And you're going to find a lot of, especially with having a dog, you're going to find that it's a lot easier to break the ice in many circumstances, because even if you screw up, it's not my fault, it's the dog's fault. You know,
Well,
you run into someone and you go, oh my God, I'm so sorry, you know, and they go, oh, no problems, because it's not creepy that you run into, say, you know, someone that is standing around that you actually wanted to go and meet because, well, the dog took you there. So I find that having that conversation and just, you know, if they like dogs, you like dogs, you've already got something in common and you can build on it. And there is, I'm sure Carlos can attest to this, is there's honestly nothing more annoying than being on the bus or being on public transit or anywhere, and you're trying to get your stuff done because everybody has deadlines, and they go, did you know my second door neighbor down the road ended up having a dog just like yours? Now, it
yes.
wasn't as well as this. Or, oh, did you know my cousin's third cousin ended up having one of these? That was a really smart dog. So it's like, well, okay, I understand that, and it's great that they had this type of dog, because these dogs are great, but I don't really care. And but having just that interaction, it really opens it up. And I've met some really, really interesting people
Yeah.
that have helped me with building my contacts and my Rolodex and saying, I think you're a really nice guy. Here's my name and number. And I've had some politicians that have done that.
Yep.
I've
That
met,
reminds me.
there was actually one of the guys that was here in Ottawa. He was here for talking, Brett Wilson. So a lot of the Americans, I'm sure, wouldn't have a clue who he is, but he was actually one of the dragons on the Dragon's Den. It's a CBC kind of elevator entrepreneur startup pitch type show, and he was just taking the bus, and so he
Is
he was
Lori
he was
on Dragon's Den?
so
No,
anyways.
hold on. I'm asking for real. Like Lori, there's because I watched an episode of Dragon. I'm sorry to break up your story, but I
Oh, no,
just
no,
like.
no, you're thinking of Shark Tank.
Oh,
You're thinking of Shark Tank. It's the
are they
exact same.
British? Or are they
So
Canadians?
the original Dragon's Den, I believe, was through BBC in Britain,
Okay.
and then you ended up getting the Dragon's Den, and then Shark Tank came afterwards, where two of the hosts, which is Robert Herjavec and Kevin O'Leary, came from the Dragon's Den Canada episode. So, and then they switched over. But anyways, and so he goes, I really like your dog. And I picked up on the voice right away. And so I was talking to him and I said, wow, like, you're taking normal transit? And he goes, well, I like to do this because a lot of people don't really kind of care who I am. And I find that it's usually very quiet. So you really meet a lot of interesting people strictly by your dog.
Yeah.
And having that, I guess, I wouldn't say so much social engagement, but I'm going to say being thrown into a situation like that, you really have to learn how to talk on your feet, or because that's really the only ways to make them stop so that you can continue doing what you want, or just being able to pass the time.
Yeah, and the dog is definitely a huge asset when it comes to making people remember you and socializing. I mean, one of the best, well, I don't know if it's best or most interesting ones was when I was doing some recruiting at Morgan Stanley, and they have these huge, events with like thousands of students probably, right? You're one of 1,000 kids. No one's going to remember you, right? Even if you ask 10 questions, which, they're going to probably think you're annoying after that, but they're not even going to remember your face. They're not going to remember you, right? But I was, my friend was really good. He got me right up to the front, right next to this guy. And so we're laying there. It took about 30 minutes. And finally he's like, all right, guys, I got to run, thanks for everything. Yada, yada, right. And as he's stepping up, Fenway stands up, and I guess, he smelled interesting because he just, leans over and starts sniffing his pants. And he goes, oh my goodness, there's a dog here. I had no idea. Right. And so, he's just so amazed that there was a dog there all this time laying down there, and being so calm. And he was just very, very pleased with the fact that the dog was there, and that he didn't cause any problems, like he was just quiet all the time. But the one thing that did, it was wrong. I corrected my dog immediately because that's not something you're supposed to do. But I'm sure that he remembered the person with the dog at that point, right? And that's kind of how I use it. Like Lauren was saying, like I've had people come up to me and be like, Fenway, what's going on? And they're like, I remember Fenway, I don't remember you. And it's like, like, hey man, I'm Carlos. Like, oh, you're Carlos. Okay, nice to see you. And then it's like, so definitely use the dog to your advantage. Even if you don't have a dog, even if you're just a guy with a cane, right? You're going to stick out. You're going to be that person who's different from everyone. And that's definitely a negative in some contexts, but you can also spin it as a positive, right? Because everyone's eyes, like it or not, are on you when you walk into a room. And instead of, oh my gosh, this is terrible, everyone's eyes are on me, use it to your advantage, take advantage of that, because I can guarantee you that anybody else who walks into a room, a lot of people wish their eyes, everyone's eyes were on them, even for a bad reason, and they're not. So, it's an asset for you.
Well, yeah, because there are people out there that will spend hundreds of thousands of dollars a year on publicists and PR people just to get eyes on them. But
Right. Even if it's not good publicity.
Well, any publicity is good publicity, right?
Yeah.
But being memorable. So, that's why you don't see a lot of spies having guide dogs, because, well, it's too memorable. But in many circumstances, your dog.
That's why they didn't hire me.
Yeah, exactly. It wasn't the eyes, it was the dog. Jeez.
Right.
But in many circumstances, it really removes the focus from you, and it focuses on the dog. And what I mean by that is they look to see how well trained that animal is. Because if that animal wants to work with you and feels very comfortable, they'll show it. And that really shows the recruiter or the person that you're trying to be social with exactly how kind of a person you are, kind of how well and that this animal respects you, or that how well you can train this animal, so they know that you have a willingness to learn or a willingness to act. And it really shows a lot about your character on how well your dog is behaved, because you can have a really well-trained dog, but if the dog doesn't feel confident enough around you, it will definitely act out, and there will be different things that it'll do. Little nuances that as a blind person may not be able to see, but someone that is just looking at you will be able to absolutely see you.
Yeah.
And it's really beneficial to utilize anything you can do. And like Carlos was saying, in the sea of 1,000 people, what is the very, very small chance that you'd be recognized? Well, Fenway, and having that. So you instantly went from having this huge sea of people to being literally laser focused directly on you, and having that interaction where, oh my gosh, there's a dog there. He's such a good dog that I didn't even notice he was there. Right. That really shone into Carlos's favor. And so if you have a tool to utilize it, why not? If you feel very uncomfortable in a room with people, if you have the ability to have a dog, or even a colored cane for that matter, you're going to be a little bit different, but you're not going to be so different that people will instantly go, oh, I don't like him because, he's wearing a big fluffy hat and sandals, and
Right.
wearing a business suit. So it would be extremely different, but it wouldn't be in the areas that someone would necessarily,
Be interested in.
yeah, or else be instantly shunned and going, oh, look at that person, they're just trying to get attention.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
it's better to organically get that attention instead of trying too hard, because the moment someone tries too hard, it's usually over for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely don't do the business suit, the floppy hat thing. But you already have that, and people aren't going to go, oh, that guy's just trying too hard because you're blind, right? Like you just have that and use it to your advantage. That's the best lesson I've learned, because I always saw it as a negative, but it's definitely not. It's definitely an asset, not a liability, an asset, to put it into accounting terms.
Well, unfortunately, we are now just actually over our time. But again,
How good
we're
this topic was.
well, exactly, and I definitely want to touch on a little bit more of that, but I do
Maybe
want to
we'll
get
follow
some
up if
more.
we think of some more things.
Yeah, or else if some of our viewers and listeners are more interested in certain particular topics or little, I guess, subtopics of the overall topic, because this is a huge topic,
Yes.
definitely email us at blindbanter@gmail.com. We're also on Twitter and Instagram at The Real Blind Banter. And then we're also on Facebook. So definitely hit us up there or leave a comment in the YouTube, and one of us will definitely get out there and respond back to you. So I just want to thank Carlos again for his time and spending, all this fun time with us. And I want to
Exactly.
thank you for watching it. And until next time, stay safe.
Thanks, guys.